Okay, greetings everybody from Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, Arizona, where I've been presenting to Sprouts Farmers Market. I flew out this morning, presented for 2 hours, and now I'm flying back to San Diego. And excited that I get to hang out in the airport and be a part of this podcast, this masterclass. We have Mark Scala here today. I'll let him do his full introduction, but just to kind of a little bit behind the curtain, I met Mark through a friend a couple of months ago, or a few months ago, and he was sharing with me what the power of video and some of the things that he was doing, and I was like, this is something that I would love for our community to be a part of and to learn from. And it may not be something that can serve you today, but it could be like a tool that's in your toolbox for when you're ready for it. And I think I know everybody here, but I think maybe one person I don't know, as a reminder, I'm president CEO of Be Driven. We work with and have a true heart for emerging brands and trying to help them to navigate almost every facet of CPG retail. We do everything from helping to fight deductions, accounting services. We also do consulting, and then do kind of a brand management, which is similar to brokerage work for many clients around the world, actually. So we created these master classes, actually as an idea of Alexander Sasha's, who put this all together. This idea, like, let's give away knowledge and let's help people along their path. And so grateful that we've been able to do about 10 of these so far, and we've created a lot of value. So I'm grateful you're here today. Thank you. And with that, I'll pass it to Mark to complete his introduction and to take us through his presentation today.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining. My name is Mark Scala. I run a company called Skalawag Productions, based in Chicago. We work in a lot of the CPG spaces in Chicago, outside of Chicago. Some brands you might recognize. I see one over here, Greenleaf Foods. We've worked with you guys on Light Life and Field Roast brands a couple of years ago. We've worked with Simple Mills, Chomps, Serenity Kids. To name a few. Also, we've worked on everything from sort of large commercial campaigns for Kraft, McCain Foods, all the way to small little stuff and startup stuff. We're partners with the Hatchery in Chicago, which is connected with the space I'm in currently. It's a sort of a business and startup incubator. So we're really passionate about not only like executing cool projects from a video perspective, but really helping turn brands from reactive content creators into a content network. That's really like, if I had a customer journey to bring people on, that's what I help direct brands do. I also have another brand called Roll Cut Studios, which focuses on larger ad campaigns for ad agencies. So when you're the Coca-Colas of the world, the Crafts of the world, you're typically hiring an ad agency to do bigger budget broadcast commercial campaigns, OTT ads, Hulu ads, that sort of thing, as well as your social presence and all that. So that brand sort of services that, which is more of an execution of creative, versus Skalawag, which is more a partner to help you develop a content strategy, a content plan, and then execute that plan in video, photo, etc. We don't run social media accounts. We don't do media buys. That's a little bit about me. I've been doing this for about 15 years. We have a full-time team of 6 operating out of Chicago. And I'm here to really talk about this idea of feeding the beast. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation here real quick. I'm a Canva, unapologetic Canva producer or presenter. So apologies for the designers in the room. If that offends you, but it's one of those things. It's easy, or like quick is better than done, right? Or like however they say it. So one of the things to expect in this masterclass, is the importance of strategy and planning. Learning the importance of the why behind strategy being important. How to approach creating content, and then we're gonna have some time for questions. So there's some things I'm gonna breeze by here. If you have questions during this, you're like, hey, I don't understand that, feel free to just speak up. This doesn't have to be me talking at you this whole time. Who we are, I did that spiel. I don't want to get into it. We're a big fan of hospitality. It's one of our core values, is understanding how to extend the table for people, create great work, but also like give a shit about the humans that we work with. So that's my team, that's our clients, that's everyone in between there. This is a photo of my team. This is our fun little photo shoot where we did Alice in Chicagoland. And if you look really closely at this photo, you'll see things like Malort, or an Italian beef sandwich, or Chicago hot dog, or some caramel corn, things that are historically known from Chicago. So like I said, my main mission in life is really to help brands go from reactive content creation to the sunny and beautiful rainbow-driven land of being a content network, okay? Some of the things we talk about when we're talking to brands, big and small, about becoming a content network, and one thing I want to mention is no matter how big the brand is, you wouldn't believe there's plenty of dysfunction. So as you grow, the dysfunction doesn't necessarily go away, or the things that you never think you're going to have time for. A lot of those problems just scale the same, right? And so when I talk about becoming a content network, some of the things we talk about is this idea of flexible, evergreen, modular content. So first things first, you need to know what you're doing. So you want to set your strategy and foundation. You need to set a course, a compass for what you're trying to do. Sometimes that comes in the form of a project, a commercial campaign, a social piece, things like this, a PR opportunity, things like that. But really what you want to be doing is try to be as ahead of the 8 ball as possible by setting up core, evergreen, flexible content that can be used for multiple purposes. I'll go into a little bit more of what that is in a little bit. But again, then next, typically I'm recommending that people are building their house. Now that we have some bricks that we can use for multiple purposes that sort of can satisfy X, Y, and Z, we're looking at like long-term pieces. This can be anything from, again, ad campaigns, brand stories, things like that. Understanding how we're going to build our house, how to take different pieces of content and bricks and actually build something useful is sort of the vibe there. Next, usually that's when we're telling people to actually start telling their story. Usually there's a lot of really like what's the word? More important tasks they need to do that are more critical to business functions than telling their story. But a lot of the time, especially at the startup stage, telling your story doesn't have to mean a brand video. It can mean you can tell your story in lots of different ways via the mediums that are available to you. But this is usually the area, once you've got sort of one set of bricks and you've started to really build a good foundation of a content library, you can now tell your story in a way that isn't going to break the bank, right? So that's one of the things we recommend to brands. And then the most important, and so the namesake of this presentation, is feeding the beast. So what I think about when I think about content creation, I'm often recommending to brands that it's not that you want to always have to do the big spend, but you need to consistently be investing reasonable amounts in content creation. And that can mean a lot of things. It doesn't mean high-end commercial filmmaking all the time. It can mean influencer content. It can mean hiring someone to do your social strategy and executing that stuff. You always have to be feeding the beast in order to sort of build a machine, which isn't like the most artistic term in the world, that allows you to be flexible and have the most flexibility down the road in the good times and the bad times. So what is a content strategy? Every piece of content that you create should be centered around a goal. So it's a way to frame your goals. Think of your content strategy as the map to get there. Now, content strategy can mean a lot of different things. When I'm talking about it, in this case, I'm often talking about video content strategy, photo content strategy, visual mediums, versus a lot of the different kinds of content strategy. You can have everything from blogs to newsletters to everything else. That also is part of your content strategy, and they should be, the right hand should generally know what the left hand is doing, and oftentimes that is our role when we're talking to brands, is how do you marry those things? So your strategy not only helps you define your goals, but also helps you define what you're making, who it's for, where they'll see it, and what they should do. And a lot of the times, answering those questions before we get to the what we're doing or the how we're doing it is one of the foundational pieces of thinking about this stuff. So who needs a content strategy? Everybody. You know, obviously that can sound scary, especially in early stage startup phase, but you need to remember a couple of things. It's okay to start small. It doesn't mean you have to like go straight to a broadcast TV campaign, and you can't be afraid to test, right? And see what works. Trial and error, especially at the younger stage companies, is your best friend, because like it's not the end of the world as long as you're not, you know, going across, you know, lines that would appropriately cancel you, right? Like, but testing different things and wanting to sort of see what works and what doesn't is important. And then number two, it's worth the work. It saves time and resources in the long run. And we want to make the content work for you. So whether you're shooting stuff with us or on your own, you want to make sure that you're thinking about this stuff ahead of time. So why video? Just I think at this point, I don't have to convince people that video can be a successful and useful medium when it comes to your marketing and many other areas of your business. But here's some facts. 82% of global internet traffic in 2022 came from video, right? Whoa. 89% of people say watching a video has convinced them to buy a product or service. And more marketers credited video with increasing dwell time, traffic, leads, sales, and reduced support queries than any other of our annual surveys since 2015. So an all-time high number of marketers, 92% told us they get a good ROI on video content, up from 87 in 2022. And, you know, obviously that's like, okay, ROI can mean a lot of things. We'll dive into that a little bit. But that's one of the things that I think, like, video is here to stay. And it has many forms, more forms than it even did in 2 years ago. So what a video is and isn't, it's part of your overall marketing plan. You need diverse content. You want to bring your brand and your story to life, and you want to make sure that the content that you're producing is representative of that brand, which can be a hard line to walk sometimes, especially with motion. And it isn't your whole marketing plan. So there's no North Star video that's going to make or break your brand. The idea of viral video is something that I will debunk a little bit later. It does exist, but often it happens on accident. And you need promotional support of what you're building, and you need to build an ecosystem of content and think about that, right? The budget matters because it on one hand, if you want to do something that's very complex, sometimes it costs a lot of money. And on the other hand, it doesn't always have to cost a lot of money if you do things that are simple, right? So anything can be done depending on how much time and money you have. You want to be realistic. Tight deadlines and tight budgets will limit your creative options. That said, there will always be plenty of options if you are willing to explore what's important and what's not important. And a video partner can work with you to help develop the best approach, but you don't need a pro necessarily all of the time, right? So part of this presentation is going to help you weigh when you should do a pro, a freelancer, yourself, all these different things. And I want you to understand quality over quantity. And that's not to say that quantity isn't sometimes the right move. Your video may be the first impression that people have on your product. And so you have to understand, where is this in the customer journey? Is it in the right spot? Do I want something that looks like this be representative of first impression of my brand? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. It should represent your brand, and evergreen content can be. I don't know about I didn't see it. Oh, I think we got someone with their mic on. Sorry, everybody. You good? All right. So learning the lingo, one of the things we talk about, we break things up into the three phases of production: pre-production, before the cameras roll; production, when the camera's unrolling and everyone is on set and doing all the things; and post-production, editing, motion graphics, music, all these things. I like to frame that up just because I've mentioned these things in a lot of ways. I want to make sure no one's lost in the jargon, which is often a problem in video production. One of the things that I try to fight against is trying to build a shared language with clients so they know they don't get lost in the technical of what I'm talking about sometimes. Getting started. When we think about this stuff, you have to think about a number of different things. And this isn't even all of them, but it's a good foundation, right? Audiences. Who are your audiences? Do you know that the answer to that question? That's something you want to dive into. What do they know about you? Where are they in the marketing funnel when we're talking to them? Channels. Is this paid ads? Is this a social media? Is it for your website? Is blog, internal, presentation, sales, all these different things. Goals. What am I trying to do here? Is this for brand awareness? Is this increase site traffic? Or am I trying to get engagement on my posts? Am I trying to get people to sign up for my newsletter? Have a plan to track before you start figuring out what you're going to shoot, right? Messaging. Who you are, what you do, showing your personality, sharing a story, and clear, concise call to action, especially on paid advertising, is really important and something that both brands, big and small, often forget about. I'm going to mention a marketing funnel because I think it's really important in context of content creation to understand why we're talking about a marketing funnel. This is a very simple marketing funnel. Yours may look different, but the core idea is the same. We work at the top of funnel, awareness, we move into interest, purchase, and then maintenance or loyalty, right? And so when you're thinking about creating content, whether it's on your own with a freelancer, with a professional video production company, with an ad agency, do we know where this fits in the funnel, especially if it's a paid ad, right? And how do we make sure that we're maximizing for where it is in the funnel and the audience that is typically likely to receive it at that stage of the funnel? And the number one thing that I talk about when I'm planning content for people is asking them, if you had to pick one action that you're trying to get your customer to perform, what is it? And the answer is always like, we want them to buy our stuff, right? And everything is sales related. And this is the importance of understanding where you are at in the funnel, because someone who is not brand aware is very unlikely to buy your product after watching a video. Now, this depends on a lot of factors. So it's not like that doesn't happen, right? Especially when you have like around Christmas time, you start getting like paid ads on social for all those, like the hot Christmas item like that. Last year, I bought those terrible balls that fly around and they lasted 5 seconds and broke. That is an example of like unbrand aware to purchasing. Sometimes that does work. In CPG, I've not seen it be always the case, right? So that's one of the things you have to be thinking about. What is the one action? If I had to pick one, what am I trying to do with this piece of content? Some of the ways you can think about this in terms of positioning and what type of content to build in a funnel or to create in a funnel. Positioning your brand in awareness, right? What are we? How do we get them to know who we are? Let's try to get them to stop scrolling from their feed to just be like, oh, what's that? Brand storytelling, explainer videos, profiles, educational content. Then moving into interests, you're typically seeing more social engagement. Sometimes you see humor and fun. You see user-generated content, people using this stuff to get them interested. Okay, I know what this product is and what it does, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm ready to buy. Oh, I see someone like me using this product. This is also where you see a lot of influencer content is at this stage in the funnel. Conversion or purchase, right? Content meant to convert engaged prospects into customers. A lot of the time, this is objection curing. So they're on the fence, right? And you want to get them. So you're taking all the objections people have to your product and you're curing them in a piece of video and a piece of social media, things like that. This is also sometimes testimonials, expert opinions. This is also sometimes influencer content. There's a spectrum here. This is not like you can only do this in this silo, this in this silo. You have to, every brand is unique. And you have to understand how the audience is interacting with your funnel, and you have to test things to understand what works for you, because there is no single right answer. And that's always the hard part about this stuff. I liken it to wine, right? Like wine is really hard because there's like, is there good wine and bad wine? Sure. But you kind of have to know the specific producer, right? To understand like whether that's like a really cool or interesting wine. Part of that is the story. Part of that is the trial and error that person had to make a great wine. But as a consumer, you don't have time to absorb all that stuff. So you have to build that relationship over time. And then loyalty is for people that have, who have already bought. So this is, hey, buy more of our stuff. Hey, we launched a new product. How do I keep you in the family so you continue to spread the word for us? Those super fans are always important. That's something I think every CPG marketer will tell you is the super fans are so important, right? So we've talked about the funnel. What's next? And again, I'm going really fast through this because I want to make sure there's time for questions, because I feel like that's usually where the most usefulness is happening. So again, I'm a social media adjacent. I'm not stupid when it comes to social media. When it comes to paid advertisement on social media, I'm a little bit smarter. But again, when it comes to like Instagram and TikTok and some of these networks we're going to talk about, these are tips and tricks. This changes all the time, right? But what's really important here from a video perspective also often is understanding formats, right? So like 9:16 vertical video or 16:9 horizontal video, or you have your 4:5s and you have your squares, right? 1:1. And each one of these programs, and most of the time we're creating content in all of these formats for people. That comes with pros and cons. I don't think we have time to get into that today. When we're thinking about Instagram, in all of these social networks, what I recommend to everybody is creating content and positioning it in the native elements. So we saw a lot the last like 10 years of like, oh, I posted on Facebook and I'm going to automatically repost to Instagram because it's easier. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things you have to build content for the platform. And you have to be on every platform these days, all these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, you have to be thinking about like, is this useful for this? Is this not just a repost? Because everyone in America has a PhD in watching television, scrolling on their phones. And if you think you're standing out by reposting a thing that was like obviously from another platform, it's not always the right play. I'm not saying it can't be. Sometimes I especially think like, we always joke, and I'm a millennial, so I feel like I can say this, but like Instagram is like stories is like millennial TikTok, right? And so it's one of those things where like there are certain situations in which it makes sense to reach an audience using the same content. And stories and TikTok, there's a lot of inner similarities there, right? YouTube, again, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, from paid ads to building a network to understanding, education videos, building a YouTube library. This is the #1 search engine in the world, essentially, because it is owned by Google, right? So YouTube, there is power beyond just creating and being individual creators on YouTube. There is a power in a repository for your brand on YouTube as well. Not to mention YouTube pre-roll ads are one of the most common things we produce, whether they're 6 seconds long, 15 seconds. Everyone's seen those. We're like, oh God, when am I going to be able to stop clicking that ad, right? Or skipping the ad. TikTok, this is especially important on TikTok when you're thinking about creating for a network. Most of the time, content that doesn't perform well on TikTok is content that is like, oh, I'm just going to repurpose my commercial on TikTok. That's not what TikTok is for. There's TikTok advertising. There's a lot of conversation we can have around that, but you should be creating, if you're trying to build your TikTok presence, you need to build content that's right for the platform, right? Using hashtags, focusing on the For You page to understand how you're fitting into trends. And you're creating content specifically for this, right? That is adjacent to your brand, somewhat related to your brand, but isn't necessarily a commercial. We actually, one of the things I talk about a lot, we went viral on TikTok like a year and a half ago. And it was nothing to do with video production. And this is the point of TikTok in a lot of ways, is like we got more exposure on TikTok because we made a stupid video about me being an elder millennial and all the dumb things I do, like having a bad back and like using a landline, even though I don't really use a landline, washing dishes, doing just silly things, having a Camelback, all these sorts of things that my Zoom Generation Z colleague always laughed at me for. And so basically we were having this really interesting discourse between millennials and Gen Z about like the dumb things millennials do, and it was just funny, and people really caught on to it, and we got all these views and interactions because we were doing something that was just showing our personality. So we're not talking about video production, we're just showing our personality, and that's what worked for us. So again, hypothesize, this was like planned. We're like, hey, we're gonna try this, this is funny, we think it's funny, so let's do it, test, go viral. So again, going viral can mean a lot of different things. Often it is manufactured, but sometimes you find the right thing and it hits the algorithm in the right way, and you can go to the moon in that regard. If you ever look it up, it's stupid, but it's funny. I won't play it here for time. Tips and tricks, some of the things we talk about a lot and we help brands do a lot of the time is repurpose content. So a lot of the time, one of the things that is one of my biggest pet peeves and ultimately lended it to looking at our process and understanding how we can do better by people, by clients, is understanding that like just because you create a piece of content doesn't mean it then goes on somebody's hard drive, lives under someone's desk, and then we never see it again. And this is photo, this is video. And now there's certain reasons why that might happen, like, oh, we rebranded, right? And so then it makes sense. But then it begs the question, how come we didn't think about that ahead of time? Right? So how do we repurpose elements that we've done? Still photography, design elements, logos, user-generated content. These are the things your video partners would love to have too. So like we are often asking people, what does your content library look like? How can we use it? Especially if budgets are tight, not having to create new things and just sort of like doing a remix on stuff can be really cost effective. And so how can we be a good partner to you to help you understand that? You also don't necessarily need us to do that. Right? You can do that if you think through what exists. Now, oftentimes people are doing 1,800 jobs that are only one person. And that's often why we are brought in sometimes, is to help manage that situation. But it's a reason to not always include pack or branding in videos, because they become more evergreen if you don't. Now, there's pros and cons to that, and there's certain like research that will say having a pack and video for certain things is a really good idea for on-the-shelf recognition and things like that. So it's not like nothing I say is like a binary situation. Everything is a spectrum, and you have to figure out what works best for you. Experimenting is something I'm a big fan of. User-generated content, behind-the-scenes videos, again, showing that personality. People want to know there are humans behind the brand. One of the things I talk about all the time to clients is like, pull back the curtain. That's the good stuff, right? Even if it's not all sunshine and roses. And I'm not saying you're not necessarily doing the Golden Bachelor, right? But like you want to create something that is interesting, inappropriate, but shows people that there are real people behind this, and it's not just all the brochure, right? Like we know what's on the brochure. We've read the website. We want to see the humanity behind it. And especially on platforms like TikTok, that stuff is going to play much better than your typical branded, here's our stuff. Sorry, I'm getting like excited. I like talking about this stuff. AI, I thought it was important to talk about AI here. This is one of those things that we're pretty on top of in the photo and the video space, because we're like, oh shit, are we going to get taken over by robots? I think we're all thinking that to a certain degree. And the short answer is like, not yet, right? These are images that I created in like 5 minutes based on simple prompts. And they're not like the worst, but they're not great either, right? And what I wanted to share is there's a lot of opportunities for you, especially as small and emerging brands, to experiment with this stuff, because it can and will be useful for you in the right circumstances. But it's not a magic bullet, because nothing is a magic bullet, if I've learned anything. And when we're talking about programs, the tips and tricks that I'd look at for photo, Midjourney is a really interesting ecosystem and platform. We've all heard of Dolly, right? And the pros are it's cheap and free in some cases. Now, lawyer, there's not a lot of rules yet around this in brands. And I think I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just exclaiming that right now. I don't know the rules around using this in paid advertising, things like that quite yet. That is going to be a mountain we're all going to be climbing together in the next 3 to 5 years. Some of the cons, though, is it takes a lot of trial and error to get anything close to on-brand content. Now, backgrounds, things like that, photoshopping things in, get creative with this stuff, because it's not that you're never, like, I'm not that worried about going out of business from this at this moment, because I've really tried to like manipulate this stuff into making photos and videos that people actually ask us for, and it has been a dumpster fire. So there's that too, right? So it can work for single instances. I think it's a little easier to get something usable with photo than it is with video at this stage. So it can work for single instances, but like not really feasible for cohesive storytelling and things like that. But when it comes to like talking head stuff, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of that manipulation take over. And we don't do a ton of that isn't like specific to a person that should be on camera versus just like a random robot person talking at you, telling you how to train somebody on doing X, Y, or Z. And those videos are boring anyway. So like, it is what it is. Hiring pros versus DIY. Here's some of the reasons why you should DIY versus hiring a pro, right? Like if you hire a pro, we can help you execute more complex goals and visuals. A lot of people have like really big ideas, and then they get down to it and they're like, oh crap, I have no idea how to do this. We have yet to find an idea that we cannot produce with enough time and money, but it doesn't always have to be a lot of money, right? So that's the other like lesson I want to sort of put out there. We can make the most of your budget. A lot of people think like, we're out here to like steal everybody's money. And what I like to say is I like to live in the Goldilocks zone. How do we create high quality and high value in that zone is where everybody is happy. And, obviously I'm running a business. I have to make money. You guys have to make money. There's only so much budget in the world, but there's a lot of different ways you can skin the cat. If you work with a good partner, they can help you weigh the pros and cons of those decisions. Learning curves can be steep when you're DIYing sometimes when you're trying to do complicated things. We can help you figure out what's best for your brand, for your audiences. What are we trying to say here? What are we trying to do here? We can also help you manage up, right? Some of the time we are working with CEOs that want it done a certain way. There's nothing wrong with that. But understanding a pro to come in and help sort of negotiate the technical side, especially when there's budgetary constraints, helps them understand that they're not getting taken advantage of. And actually, we're trying to do everything in our power to check the boxes on the goals that we're trying to achieve. Sometimes what we're doing, more often what we're doing is helping like dial in what actually is important within the team, within the C-suite, all those things to be sort of that bridge to get everyone moving and executing stuff that we need to. And if you don't know what to do, sometimes that's the play as well, is to bring in a pro. When you're looking at DIYing, I mean, the pros are it's free, right? Except for your time. Experiment when you're starting out is something I'm always thinking of. Like try something on your own before you hire a pro. If it works, chances are it's going to work again. It could be faster to produce in-house. That is not always the case either. So it just depends on your company, your brand, et cetera. You know the brand better than anyone, right? A lot of the times what we're doing is being that conduit, and we're learning on the go, and the long-term relationships that we've had, we are an extension of the brand. There's some brands we've worked with where we were like actually onboarding some people on the visual side because we had more experience with the brand than half the team did, right? organic, off the cuff, fun content that doesn't feel pro sometimes performs better on certain channels. So this is, again, it's a spectrum of like, what's the best play here is the question you need to ask, not we need it this way or we need it that way. Think about the why behind it, right? Then what? Promotion. Again, the myth and misconception around viral video is that you put a video on your website and a gazillion people are going to come watch it. And I think most of the time people understand that these days, that often it is a massive promotional ecosystem and engine that allows something to be truly viral. Now, there still is, just in the case of our TikTok situation, we went viral. Sasha, you went viral, right? Like, it was one of those things. Sometimes it does happen in a vacuum, right? Where you're putting something that people gravitate towards, it hits the algorithm right, and like, boom, to the moon. But it's not always the case, especially with paid ad content. And that's one of the things I always have to be like, hold the phones, everybody. Like, we can talk about virality, but really it's often those sort of behind the curtain moments that are more often to go viral, unless you have a major ad spend and marketing ecosystem behind it. Okay. So the moral of the story is how do I cross promote what I'm trying to do, whether that is paid advertising, whether it's social media. It's something as simple as referencing your post in your story on Instagram, right? That's a really simple example of how you can do that. Making sure your newsletter is promoting what you're doing on your social channels, things like that. How do I sort of get my message out there, depending on what my budget is, what the scope of like what my team can do is, all those things. And it's never ending. Performance. What am I measuring, right? Metrics help you gauge your audience reaction towards your content. They'll also help you determine if your content met your goals. So when we're talking to clients, it's one of those things where we don't do ad buys, right? And so there's a lot of things that can impact ROI when it comes to video. If nobody's seeing it, why, right? And some of those things are audience targeting that have nothing to do with the content. But sometimes it is, how do we measure some of this stuff? Views, audience engagement, leads and clicks, brand awareness, which is a little more ethereal, retention, literal sales. So like if we're doing a direct consumer ad on a social channel, are they clicking it and are they buying it? Are they abandoning the cart? What are they doing? But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, did the audience perform the action that you wanted them to? If you're trying to get them to perform more than one action, they're not going to do it. And that's one of the things that I'm also saying a lot in these meetings. So that's it for now, but keep it up. The strategy and feeding the beast is almost never done, which is kind of like running up that hill, as Kate Bush said, right? Like, that's one of those things that I keep thinking about when it comes to this. But if you do it incrementally and over time and consistently, it's not as big of a budget hole as it can be. And how most brands do it is like, they have this big thing, here's all the money. If we would have thought ahead a little bit more, we could have saved a lot of money, saved a lot of stress, and been able to sort of do something that was equally as good or better for less money, right? When it's always down to money at the end of the day, whether it's incoming or outgoing. And I think the only way you can really mess up is not having that strategy to start, or always thinking about your compass in that regard. This cheat sheet is something you guys can get that they're going to send you, where, like, if you're stuck and you're not sure how to sort of start a strategy here, and this works for most content, whether it's paid advertising, social media, whatever, and it's sort of a step-by-step guide of how can I actually understand the what, who, where before I get to the how. So often we have this cool idea, but we don't know who it's for or why I'm saying it. Understand that stuff first before you get to what you're going to do. And that's one of the things that can help you save here. This leads us to what we do, which is our strategy workshop, where we take and listen to observations from the brand, understand what their goals are, and then provide them with solutions. And that's how we partner with brands to help them create stuff that is in that Goldilocks zone, and help them essentially become a content network. A lot of the time, it's really helping them understand how do they get to that point. I'd love to connect with everybody on here. I'm offering 30-minute strategy sessions where we can just riff and talk through what some of the challenges are, and be a sounding board to you to work through whatever you're working on. I'd love it if you guys added me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, or at least I was until like 2 months ago when we've been working on this giant project, and I've been like lacking, but I'm going to get back to that in December after we wrap on production next week. And my email's there, the website's there. You can look at our work and our social channels that we're active on. LinkedIn is what I'm most active on, but the team is active on Instagram, and we're semi-active on Facebook and TikTok. When we're busy, we those channels go by the wayside, as you guys know how that rolls. So That's it. All right, 40 minutes. That's
Wow.
sorry, so whiz bang.
Mark, you have more energy than me, and that's saying something. You did amazing. I learned so much, and you covered a lot. I really appreciate how you targeted a lot of your messaging to emerging brands. And you
Yeah.
kind of gave, the DIY is possible, but here's other ways, and I think that means a lot to especially like some of the people on this call today. So definitely the most fun we have in these master classes is when Sasha helps lead us in kind of the conversations and the questions. So I'll pass it over to Sasha at this point.
All right, so we have one question from Chris. Hi, Chris. So I'll read it, and if you want to add anything else to that question, you kind of like touched on it before, but so any advice for the solopreneurs without a team? Time is a luxury, and the social content seems to be a lot of time dedication for us, for just one person groups. I'm in Wisconsin. Should I make a road trip for a working lunch in Chicago?
Hey, you never have to convince me to eat, Chris. Okay, like Chicago is a food town. I would love to have you at the studio, and that goes for anyone if they want to hop by. Love to show off what we're doing here. The advice is as a solopreneur, as an entrepreneur, it's always the divide and conquer, right? And at one time I was doing this by myself and doing all the roles, and you just have to prioritize what gives you the right ROI, right? So social media is one of those things that people think like, I need to have it, I need to do it. And I would actually argue is like, I don't know that you always do. And it depends on what your business is and where your audience is living. Because if you're selling to boomers, they're not on TikTok, okay? But they are on Facebook, right? And so like understanding the audience bit should be able to inform you what you should be focusing on. And so the reason why I'm so active on LinkedIn is because other entrepreneurs and people in the CPG space and the people making marketing decisions are on LinkedIn and are active on LinkedIn. And I have a lot of weird like beyond video, I'm very vocal and interested in building businesses. And so like, that's one of those things that's a world in a sandbox that I play in because I want to and I care. And that's actually like us going viral on TikTok. I didn't get a single job from that. But was it a good story that I talked about on LinkedIn? I think I got more jobs from talking about it on LinkedIn than I did actually doing it. And so do you see what I'm saying? Is like, you have to figure out where your audience is living to understand where you should be putting your time. But the whole checkbox thing of like, I got to be doing this is just going to stress you out, man, because that list is never done. And I feel that too, for the record. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions? I actually have a question. We have a client, emerging brand. They make these like delicious Mexican sauces.
Ooh,
And so we started doing Instagram, and we hired agency to do it. And basically they were just posting content that just shows the product and showing in a caption the attributes of it, but we didn't really see any much engagement or any increase of following. So like for product, it seems to be really difficult to get people to follow you if you're just like posting about your product. So how should you think about it?
Yeah, this is one of those things that as algorithms change, it gets really hard to map out where do we allocate our dollars, right? And when I'm thinking about that sort of thing, it's important to have those informational things so when people are looking for that, they can find it. But at the end of the day, if people are doing the scroll and they're just seeing it, they know immediately when it's an ad. You know what I mean? But and this is where I think influencer content does it right. Where what's more engaging, if you were to just put yourself in that person's shoes who's watching it, what's more interesting to me if I'm looking at like a different sauce? Somebody actually using a sauce in a way that I might use the sauce on TikTok or even Instagram in a real setting that's like sort of that, the influencer video style now, where it's just like, I'm doing this and blah, blah, blah. And we show close-ups and it's the ASMR stuff. That is more engaging than being like 8 grams of protein, this, and this. But also, you also might not be talking to the right people. And so I would say, what is your audience targeting? There's so many agencies out there. I cannot tell you and like there's good ones too, don't get me wrong, but there are some ones that are just like, they've got a flashy presentation and they say, we're going to up your following. And like, cool, but like, is it the right people that are following you? Is it your target customers, or is it just random stuff? And this is the void that of social media that is like the dark side of it in some ways, where like I think it's a necessary thing in some ways and for some brands to have a presence there. But it's really like, it comes back to, for me, it's like, what is the right move for us? Why do I need to grow my Instagram brand? Because somebody told me to? Or would I have more ROI doing tastings in a grocery store? Because like that is the other element of like people, you know, I was talking to a guy who runs a pizza, like little pizza empire in Chicago. And he goes, you know what? I tried to do all the social media stuff and I didn't see any uptick in sales. But you know what really did it for me? Direct mail. And we go, what? Direct mail? That's crazy. It's like, don't underestimate the power of audience building in the right way. Or for his business, he was like, people just want coupons. So I send them coupons and they keep buying the pizza. So figure out what works. And I would think about like, this is why, like, I'm always telling people to like, what is your newsletter list like? Because you know what? You have those people captured for life. And you know what you can use that list for? Audience targeting, right? So when you build your newsletter list and you have a whole ecosystem of people that have bought your product before, you can put that into social media advertising, into paid ad and from ad agencies or on your own, all these different things to build lookalike audiences to target to those specific people that you know are in your target audience, instead of getting a bunch of random followers that aren't pulling the trigger on anything. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, thank you. So like if you are just starting, should you just kind of like try different kind of things and see what works? Because you don't really know, right, when you're beginning, like that this is gonna work.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part about it, is experimentation. Is like, where do I find the time? And where I go back to is the thing you have at your disposal is your story, and it's free. And that's the thing that's going to connect people to you. Think about the things like if you sold your product at farmers markets or grocery stores and you were standing there the whole time, what kinds of conversations do you have? What stories have they told you about your product that impacted them in some way, in meaningful ways or in superficial ways? Doesn't matter. Retell those stories. That shit is free. Do that, you know? And so like, think about it from putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding what motivates you. That's not to say that's always going to be the same thing, but when I'm thinking about something and I'm not sure how it's going to be, that's what I do. Is I ask myself, I ask some people that are close to me that are sort of in the target audience that I'm looking for, and then make a decision from there.
Yeah, I like when you were talking about like make it really personal and show your personality.
Yeah, like that, like that's it's hard, but that doesn't mean you need to be like the hot influencer on TikTok doing all these things and like, like showcasing all your affiliate marketing and stuff. Like you can find your own way to do that, but make sure that fits with like who typically buys your product, right? Because then if you tailor that messaging and that ecosystem into that, then you're just going to be closer to the 8 ball. And then you can start playing in a way that and testing things that feels more like a hypothesis versus a guess.
Yeah, got it. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Any other question? I have another question actually. Let's go, Miguel.
Thank you. Well, I have a couple of comments. One is I think we have to understand where we are in this path, because, and I'm going to use my own example. We have a company that distributes in many countries in Latin America. For that business, we do know how to do marketing using regular, normal strategies, from tastings to buying spaces in supermarkets and so on. And but we are launching a new set of products. There are categories that we never worked on. Therefore, understanding that we are new in this marketplace, and that we also want to attack the US market, because we're based in San Diego as well, like Luke. And then there's a new whole game. And of course, what you just mentioned, I think, is very important. Show your personality, and it's not the personality of the product, but also the people that works developing that product. And not forgetting the goals that you want to reach. But I was listening a message from someone this morning that she was implementing a small business where she had an explanation of the product, and she was selling something for the African American community, and she was explaining how to through social media how to apply this product into her own hair. And that example really jumped her into viral. So she was showing the personality of her product, and she was also showing the personality of the people behind the product. Those two things combined, and the result of the product that she was promoting really caught the attention of the public. But there's a lot of things to learn for people that, even though we can have experience in other areas on how to use these new tools from the regular video design, not forgetting what ROI do you want to have, or what target audience do you want to get, but also the new additional tools like AI. There's a lot of things that we can improve in terms of content and information that we can quickly develop and validate with these tools to reach the right markets. So the experience is for us is not there. So that's why we are here to learn and try to understand better how we can target those ROIs and target our price point associated to that particular goal, because at the end is a value change that we need to make sure that is satisfied. And as long as the volume exists through the help of these channels is when this can be useful. Otherwise, if we don't, what you mentioned, I think is also very important. If we can identify what works for our product is critical. If direct mail works for them and coupons is another way to do promotion, and at the end is the marketing apply in different ways. So we are in uncertain territory right now, especially for the US. We still need to learn a lot.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think it's one of those things where there's no one size fits all solution. There's no magic bullet, and every time you enter a new category or a new market or a new audience, it changes the game. Sometimes you have to refigure them. There's likely some of the things that worked for the other brands is going to work for this in some capacity, but you got to keep experimenting and testing to see what works the best for you. And sometimes that's like you do it internal. Sometimes you hire external ad agencies. Sometimes you hire people like us. It just depends on what is the need, right? But if you hypothesize and test and you see success in little areas, then you can double down on the things that you know, at least you have a good idea should work. Are they going to work every time? No, that's marketing, unfortunately. So, yeah. Cool.
That's great. I have a quick question, Mark. You have Dom on the call, and him and I worked on a project maybe a year and a half ago. We hired a content creator. We did amazing videos on TikTok. We even had a collab, I think it's called, with Mark Cuban, and
nice.
it was millions of views and over, hundreds of thousands, and D2C, and our product Son of Expenses, Manuka Honey. But we just never saw any attributable sale. Like, how could 1 million people watch a video with our product in it and not one person be attributable to actually buying anything? I don't understand. And
Yeah.
we stopped spending the money on creating content because we just figured it wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, you should just I wonder if you could just put that money into just getting Mark Cuban to tweet it out one time,
Right.
and then maybe that would that's the enigma, right? And I think a lot of brands are so like 3 years ago, what happened to us is before 3 years ago, we were doing a lot of social media, right? And then you saw the rise of the influencer over the last 5 years, and a lot of the social media work that we were doing kind of went away because people were more into this sort of like experiential, like I'm there sort of amateur style video. And again, like for me, it's like, I don't really care what we produce as long as it's interesting and it's backed by strategy and it's in a good partnership. But what's happening now is basically you're trying to leverage other people's networks. But what I would say is maybe that audience who you were participating with wasn't the right audience.
Yeah.
For that, or, 1 million views. How does TikTok view a view, right? And this is where we get into like a deep rabbit hole of analytics and how sometimes
Wow.
this isn't always what it seems. And yeah, like that doesn't exactly make you feel real warm and fuzzy about putting money somewhere, right? And it's not black and white. It's not like it's this or that. But if it's good that there's no return. This is not the right play. We need to move on. Sometimes you have to cut the line, cut bait and go,
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, common sense says 1 million views.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, like could someone please buy some honey? And so I think we realized too is that like we our customers at this Manuka Honey Company are tend to be 45 years and older, because a jar of this can be $20, $30, $40, $50. And so we realized is that we were trying to like get the younger kids excited about Manuka, but it just wasn't happening, right? So I think to your point, if we'd gone in Facebook and spent the money doing viral things, even getting 20,000 views would have been the right consumer, right? It isn't a number of views. It's really like the right views.
The right views. And that's the future of analytics, is the right customer, right? Like understanding who we're talking to and understanding that you cannot move your audience. If you're trying to move your audience, and unless you're Coca-Cola and you have literally Scrooge McDuck money in a vault that you're swimming through, you need to go where your audience is, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. That was an expensive learning process, right, Dom?
Yep.
If you're there, Dom. Yeah, it was crazy. So are there any other questions? I know I know, Mark, you have a hard stop coming up. Is there anybody else has a question for Mark before we end? And Amy, I know you know Mark, so you must have something on your mind.
Well, that's funny. I actually just joined the Greenleaf team in September, so I didn't even realize. I think I met you years ago at WeWork, but
yeah, love it.
But yes, I learned about this this masterclass through your LinkedIn. So it is you are reaching the right people on there. But I do have a quick question. I know you did mention earlier, and specifically, I think it was for Instagram, to learn and track trending things. And I was just curious from your perspective, like what is the best way to maybe track some of that or
Yeah, I would say it's more so even for TikTok for hashtags and trends than Instagram is. Like that's where like how the algorithm works for TikTok specifically is all based on people, like businesses, people, influencers hopping on a thing that exists and doing their own flavor of it and hitting that trend when it's happening. And a lot of it is you have to be active and in it, right? And one of the reasons why like people my age and older don't love or like to interact with TikTok is because it's just the same shit over and over again, in my opinion. But like, that's just, it's not built for me. So like, shut up, old man, is what I tell myself, right? You have to be in it. If you want to be on it, hire someone who's in it, because they're going to, and this is exactly how we did the viral thing. If I had never hired our associate producer, Bailey, we never would have done this, because I was like, where's the ROI? But like through like LinkedIn, like there is an ROI. So how do you amplify the story on top of it? How do you make it work for you? And if you are just like a lot of the time people are like, I got to be on TikTok because my boss said we need to be on TikTok, but they have no reason why. And that's the lesson. Why am I doing something? And so often we're just like trying to check the boxes, as my therapist would say, check the boxes, right? And get it done. And I think entrepreneurs are in that mindset all the time of like, I just need to get it done so I can move on to the next thing. Ask yourself, why are we doing this? And that will oftentimes really help illuminate whether it's a good decision or not.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Awesome.
Right. And I think we are coming up to the 12 hours, so we can close this off. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us and doing this masterclass. It was love your energy and everyone's on this call. And make sure that if you want to connect with Mark, his email address, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. And are you guys gonna send them the strategy cheat sheet? It has has links to my Calendly and LinkedIn, and you can just feel free to book a 30-minute session with me if you guys want to, just to say hi or shoot the shit or work through any problems that you guys have in your brains.
Awesome. Yeah. And we send also the
Have lunch when you come to Chicago.
awesome.
That's open for anyone around Chicago, or if I'm in your market, I'll come find you and eat lunch.
We'll be there.
You're in Chicago. You come have lunch, Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. Take you up on that.
Love it.
Let's do it.
Cool. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.